Hello and good evening, everybody, and it's really hard to believe that I am now up to my 24th episode of Album Rant, and I just, once again, just want to give a shout out to all of you out there who have really made this possible. I never could have done it without you, and you are very much appreciated. I think I'm up to 14 subscribers right now, and you guys are just amazing. But anyways, for episode 24, I thought it would be a very good idea to return to the world of King Diamond. And I sort of talked about him earlier. I believe it was episode 7. I was talking about a little old band called Merciful Fate. And Merciful Fate began in the early 80s, and I believe there were, the band kind of went through a bunch of different name changes. I know they were called the Brats at one point. But anyways, Merciful Fate released their very first EP in the year 1982, and it was absolutely incredible. It had cuts such as A Corpse Without Soul, Nuns Have No Fun, Doomed by the Living Dead, and Devil Lies! And I loved every single song. They put out their first full-fledged album in the year 1983, and that was what I talked about in episode 7, and it was entitled Melissa, and it's one of my favorite albums ever. Has classics such as Evil, Curse of the Pharaohs, Into the Coven, At the Sound of the Demon Bell, Black Funeral, Satan's Fall, and the title track. But could they follow up the success of Melissa? Absolutely. Because in 1984, they released one of the greatest metal albums ever, in my opinion, and it was entitled Don't Break the Oath. And it had cuts such as A Dangerous Meeting, Nightmare, Desecration of Souls, Night of the Unborn, The Oath, Gypsy, Welcome Princes of Hell, To One Far Away, and Come to the Sabbath. And the lineup for all three of those releases was King Diamond on lead vocals, Hank Sherman on lead guitar, Michael Denner on lead guitar, Timi Hansen Grabber on bass guitar, and Kim Ruz on the drums. And I gotta tell you, the dual guitar work of Hank Sherman and Michael Denner, it is right up there with the likes of Judas Priest and Iron Maiden. It is that good. The riffs are absolutely amazing. Hank Sherman wrote the majority of the music, and I gotta say, it is some of the best songwriting I have ever heard in my life. And of course, King Diamond wrote all the lyrics, which, to say the least, were pretty messed up if you think about it. I mean, and when you're down beyond the ground, I'll dig up your body again and make love to shame. Jeez, man, come on. But basically, Merciful Fate was basically a combination of the occult themes of Black Sabbath, the dual guitar work of Judas Priest, and the falsetto of Uriah Heep and Deep Purple. And I loved every second of it. But for some reason, in late 1984, early 1985, Hank Sherman, who, like I said, is one of the best guitarists and best songwriters I have ever encountered or ever become knowledgeable of, he decided he wanted to take the band in a different direction. He wanted to make a pop rock album. Why you would ever want to make a pop rock album when your previous material was highly satanic is beyond me, but that's what he wanted. And he even reportedly came out on stage many times wearing sweatpants while everybody else was dressed in black leather, and King Diamond, of course, had a cape on and makeup that had several inverted crosses on it. So Hank Sherman left the band around that time, 1984, 1985 or so, as did drummer Kim Ruz, and basically King Diamond decided that he wanted to embark on a solo career. Now here's the thing. When he embarked on this solo career, which is phenomenal, by the way, he took with him Michael Denner and Timi Hansen from Merciful Fate. And Hank Sherman and Kim Ruz were replaced with Andy LaRoque and Mikkey Dee, respectfully. Now, I'm not exactly sure why they had to change the name of the band. I mean, just look at Yes, or Uriah Heep, or Deep Purple. They underwent lineup changes all the time, and they didn't change the name of the band, but I guess they were just thinking, King Diamond is clearly the star of this band. Let's just retitle the band and name it after him. Honestly, I don't care, because he was still making music, and that's all I cared about. And he released a single in 1985 entitled No Presents for Christmas, which was hilariously awesome. Then he released his first full-length album in the year 1986 entitled Fatal Portrait. And this is really kind of the main difference between the Merciful Fate records and the King Diamond records. The Merciful Fate records all have Hank Sherman on lead guitar. The King Diamond records all have Andy LaRoque on guitar. But the Merciful Fate records, their subject matter is more about Satanism, while the King Diamond records are more about storytelling and ghost stories. They were all concept albums, which I definitely respect. King Diamond was secretly a very, very serious Alice Cooper fanatic. And I love Alice Cooper. One of my favorite albums by Alice Cooper is Welcome to My Nightmare, which is also a concept album. And that was one of King Diamond's main inspirations behind Fatal Portrait. But we had, Fatal Portrait was not a full concept album. 5 of the songs told a story, and they were entitled The Portrait, The Jonah, The Portrait, Dressed in White, and Haunted. But the other songs off of Fatal Portrait, which were not part of the unifying concept, were Sharon, Lurking in the Dark, Halloween, and Voices from the Past. And so it was a very, very successful record. I see it as more of a third Merciful Fate album, but technically it is the debut album by King Diamond. And that is going to bring me to the subject of tonight's review, his second full-length album, his first full concept album, appropriately entitled Abigail, released in 1987. And you can see the cover art right here. Let's go ahead and look on the back. We have the lineup. We have King Diamond on all the vocals, and there he is, the madman he is. Ironically enough, he's actually a really nice guy. I saw him in concert back in 2019, and boy, he was so appreciative of the audience, and he was just happy to be able to play, and I really respect that. We have Andy on lead guitar. He was not in Merciful Fate. We have Michael Denner on lead guitar. He was in Merciful Fate. We have Timi Hansen on bass guitar. He was also in Merciful Fate. And then we have Mikkey Dee on the drums, who was not in Merciful Fate. But let's take a look at the track list. And as I said, this is a concept album, and basically it tells a unifying story. And every single song is kind of like a chapter. And it kicks off with Funeral. And this tells the story of a count who recently committed suicide after he murdered his wife after she gave birth to a bastard baby. And basically, the Black Horsemen are basically tying the baby, the corpse, to a coffin, and they are inserting 7 spikes inside of its body, one through each arm and a knee. And the last of the 7 may be drawn through her mouth, so that she may never rise and cause evil again. Jeez, that's messed up. But a fun story about Funeral, it's really just an introduction to the album. It's really just kind of a gloomy little interlude or gloomy little introduction. When I first started driving, I sometimes went to the pool in the morning to go swim and get a workout in. And this was like 3 days after I got my license. I was listening to this album on CD, obviously, and a funeral was playing, and it was really kind of a creepy feeling because I'm half asleep. I'm new to driving, and it's very dark outside. It was very foggy, and this track really kind of set the mood. But they did play that the one time I saw them in concert, and it was pretty incredible. But then it segues into the first actual track, the first actual song, Arrival. And Funeral took place in the year 1777. Arrival takes place 23 plus 45. That would be 68 years later in the year 1845. One of the Count's ancestors, named Jonathan LaFay, yeah, you see what they did there, and his wife Miriam have inherited the house where all that evil happened a long time ago. They come to the house. The carriage is being driven by the Black Horseman, and he warns them, stay away. And Jonathan just laughed and said, stay out of my way. I don't believe a word you say. They played this the time I saw them in concert. I had the entire row to myself. I was bouncing all over the place. It was a great experience. But then it fades again, once again, into the third track, the second actual song, A Mansion in Darkness. And what's happening in this chapter is Jonathan and Miriam are starting to notice some strange things going on in the house. They hear voices. They have a very gloomy atmosphere, and they notice that the house seems to be alive. They also played this in concert. It came right after Arrival, and I was once again banging my head, running all over the place, singing along. It was such an incredible experience. After A Mansion in Darkness, I was so in the mood for the Family Ghost, but they kind of stopped there and played something else. But in the Family Ghost, Jonathan is visited by the ghost of Count de la Fay, and he basically says, follow me down to the crypt. I have a story to tell you. And the story takes place on the 7th day of July, 1777. And what's happening here is the Count is recapping to Jonathan what exactly happened on that day. Abigail was born dead. She was, again, nailed to a coffin and was buried so that she could never rise and cause evil again. But Abigail will, of course, rise again and cause evil. They did not play this one when I saw them, but it's okay. Then the next three songs, Deadly Omens! The possession and the title track. What is happening here is essentially the spirit of Abigail has risen up into the house. It has started to possess Miriam, and now Miriam is pregnant with the reincarnation of Abigail. Abigail is trying to be birthed from a physical human being so that she can come back and she can wreak havoc and evil on the world. Omens, I didn't really like so much as a kid. Well, I didn't dislike it. It was a track I usually skipped over. I have now started to hear it a lot more, and I have really grown to appreciate it a lot. It's got a very, very catchy beat. It's got a nice little interlude in the middle, which has kind of a gloomy atmosphere once again. But I actually do like Omens. The possession is very slow. It's very doom metal-ish. Starts out with a great bass riff, and then the guitars start kicking in, and it's heavy, but it's slow. And of course, Miriam is being possessed by the spirit of Abigail. But then we segue once again into probably one of the best tracks on the album. I'm not sure if this is the best one, but it's definitely in the top two. The title track. It kicks off full-fledged. It's got this very nice 19th century feel to it. Like it sounds like something from that time period, which is very appropriate because that's when the story takes place. But here, Abigail is basically fully in possession of Miriam's body and brain. She is the one who is speaking through her, and Jonathan just does not know what to do because Jonathan's wife has been completely possessed by the demon spawn of Abigail, and it is a great title track. But then it concludes with the Black Horseman. The Black Horseman is a 7-minute, 39-second concluding track from the album. Starts out very, very soft, has some acoustic work in there. King Diamond sings for a little bit and just kind of reminisces on how Jonathan notices what is wrong with his wife, and Jonathan is scared. Jonathan is scared. Then it starts kicking up, and it starts building up, and it gets very, very fast in the middle, and it is basically telling the story about how Jonathan is trying to stop the madness that is happening. He is trying to stop the demon spawn from being born, but Miriam, who is possessed by the demon baby Abigail, pushes him down the stairs, just like Count de La Fay's wife was killed. He breaks his neck, and now he's dead. Miriam gives birth to Abigail. Abigail obviously kills Miriam as she's being birthed out of Miriam. Then she crawls down to the crypt. She finds the sarcophagus that has the original Abigail's body, and she eats it. The Black Horseman then arrives at the house. He sees the evil that is going on. He takes the new baby, the demon spawn of Abigail, and he once again performs the ritual, which will inevitably start the cycle all over again. And that is the story of Abigail. And wow, this could legitimately be made into a horror film. I am not joking. This is a great, great album. This is one of the last King Diamond albums I bought for some reason. I bought The Eye first, then I bought Fatal Portrait, then I bought Them, and I think after that I bought Abigail. But boy, this is probably the best King Diamond solo album. Is it as good as all the Merciful Fate records? I gotta admit, Melissa and Don't Break the Oath are also really, really strong, and I think I rank those higher, but Abigail is definitely a phenomenal experience, and I think everyone needs to hear it at some point in their life. King Diamond has often been referred to as the Stephen King of metal, and I completely agree with it. But if I was going to pick a favorite from side 1, it's probably going to be Arrival. If I got to pick a favorite from side 2, it's either the title track or the Black Horseman, but I'm probably going to go with the title track. Unfortunately, this would be the very last album that has Michael Denner on it and Timi Hansen on it. They would be replaced with Pete Black and Hal Patino for the following album, and this was basically the last time that King Diamond had any remnants of the Merciful Fate days, but that's okay. It's all right. He has to evolve, he has to change, he has to progress, and he has to form his own identity, and boy, has he ever formed his own identity. But anyways, that was Abigail, and I absolutely 100% recommend it. Next time, we're going to take a look at an artist who really, really has a chance to shine live in concert, even more than they do in the studio. But until then, have a very pleasant evening.